Hi everyone. So today in this video, we will be going through skills 1 through 8, particularly for CMP and RWT questions, and how they apply to the Picasso passage, which is a notorious passage from the first volume question pack from the AAMC. So, what I'll be doing with you today is I will be going through some important skills that you have to keep in mind and then, try to dissect the passage. And I have the passage over here for you. I just have things that I would highlight, I would underline when I went through the passage the first time, just important things. And so, that being said, let's get started. Keep in mind these are for CMP and RWT questions, right? There's not too many RBT questions that are, touched upon. And in the next video, I will be doing the questions with you. And so with that being said, let's get started. So the first strategy point being, pass through long paragraphs with lots of examples easily. Multiple examples are often used in passages to explain the same basic point. Remember to take note of any important people named. For example, Sigmund Freud. Frequently, questions will contrast the author's views with those of people listed in the passage. So, what I'm trying to say here is that whenever there's long paragraphs and there's just a laundry list of examples and information, don't get too caught up in all that detail. Just pay attention to what the common theme is. Just keep in the back of your head why the author is bringing up the examples that he is. Chances are it's because he's trying to highlight one particular point, and try to zero in and on what that point is. And when you do that, you won't get lost in all the little details. Awesome. So then, great. Okay, so the issue with the second one, I accidentally have a typo, but I'll explain what I meant here, right? So when an author is expressing an opinion that varies from his own, look for a link between the person's thought and his own upcoming input. So what the author is going to do a lot of times is express an opinion that's completely different from what the author himself thinks. So just look for this link and look for this relationship, what the difference is, because doing so will help you keep things, in one place in your head, keep track of things easily. Because what will happen is that there will be questions that will be asked about, basically you have to discern between what the author's opinion are and what the opinions are of the other people that the author mentioned. So it's just you have to keep track of all that stuff so you don't fall for the bait answers. All right, so moving on. Skill number 3, make use of previous research on test data to answer questions easily and earn easy points. What would happen most of the times is that, whatever research you did for the other questions, they will help you guide you to the answer to the other questions that are coming up later on in the section. So what I'm trying to say here is that, whatever answers you've picked for the previous questions and you're very sure about those answers, right? Use those answers to help you answer the next questions. Doing so, it's like an easy trick. It will help you, save some time on test day. Now, obviously, there's a caveat to this that, if you don't really know the passage and you've answered the previous questions incorrectly and then you rely on that to answer the subsequent questions, it won't be beneficial for you. So, yes, it's more beneficial if you do actually went through the passage and you do actually know what the passage is saying, than, searching for the answer for every single question on your own and not using the other, questions as a guide. All right, so moving on. Number 4, The author will often comment on his perspective on various competing theories in subsequent paragraphs. Hold these competing theories in the back of your mind until he or she comments on them. Basically, what I'm telling you here is don't jump to conclusions too quickly, because the chances are that the author is going to elaborate on whatever he's saying later on in the passage. What we tend to do is that, we have been conditioned to read the introduction paragraph and establish the tone of the author. You can't do that on the CARS MCAT. For you to establish the tone of the passage of the author, you need to read the whole passage. You can't just rely on the first paragraph, right? That will be jumping to conclusions too soon. So read the first paragraph, right? Don't skim through it, thoroughly read it. But whatever is being said in the first paragraph, just remember that these are just minor points to a much deeper analysis that the author will be doing later on in the passage. So just don't get caught up on little details in the first paragraph too soon, right? All right, so number 5, proper names, italicized text, and titles will help you find related concepts and text quickly. So here what I'm trying to say is that, whenever you see names or italicized text, titles, just don't ask yourself what this means. You need to go further than that. You need to ask yourself why the author used what he did, right? Why did the author italicize this text? Why did the author put this text in quotation marks? You need to ask yourself that. You need to ask yourself why the author did it and what point he was trying to make in doing so. Not just, what the italicized text means and stuff like that. Because asking the why questions will help you do a much more deeper analysis of the passage. Because if you just ask yourself what this stuff means and not the why question, it will be a very superficial analysis of the passage, and you need to dig deeper. And so to dig deeper, you need to, ask the why question. Why did the author italicize this? What he was trying to say by doing this and stuff like that. Awesome. Okay. So now, point number 6. Typically, the first few sentences of a passage present a common viewpoint. The deeper reality, the meat of the passage, is explored later in the first paragraph or subsequent paragraphs. Don't get drawn into basic ideas too early. So once again, this is tying in to, the other point that we made earlier. That being that, the first few, sentences are not that serious. That's the best way to put it. I can put it. The first few sentences, usually they are hard, right? Like, for example, look at it, the Picasso passage. It just goes on and on and on. And I can't tell you how many times my students have told me, I don't understand what the second sentence of this passage means. And that's okay. You don't have to. Just try to figure out what the author was saying by, giving you this laundry list. And so that question will be answered by just, looking at the first half of the sentence. And so, you don't need to know what these other things are. Just try to figure out why the author is bringing up these other things. What is the point the author trying to make, right? Because during the MCAT, during the CARS section, you will have very difficult passages with vocabulary you've probably never seen before, right? And so if you just sit up there, try to figure out what every single little word means, it will take you forever. Just try to figure out what the point is, why the author is saying what he's saying, right? And I'm not going to go too deep into this right now. That will be for my next video. Awesome. And so number 7, as an efficient technique for not questions, fully rephrase the question and search for the answer that meets the standard not the 3 that do not. So over here, what I'm trying to say is that when you come across the not questions, keep in mind, just try to find the answer choice that's blatantly wrong instead of trying to find out why the other ones are true. Because you're trying to do the process of elimination and you think that if you find out, evidence for the other 3, you can eliminate them and giving you the right answer, right? The issue with that is it's not efficient. It takes up too much time. So when you're going through the answer choices, stick to one that's jumping out at you as being blatantly wrong. It's blatantly going against the main idea of the entire passage or perhaps that paragraph, whatever it is. If it's blatantly wrong, just pick that. Because if you try to go back and try to find why every single other answer is true, try to find evidence for that, it's not going to work, right? Because what the AAMC sometimes likes to throw at you is that there will be answer choices which are not necessarily true, but they're not wrong either. They're in the middle. And those are the bait answers, especially for the not questions. So what you have to do is you have to pick the best answer for these not questions, and that answer choice is the one that's blatantly wrong. So just keep that in mind because that's a bait a lot of people fall for a lot of times. And so lastly, if a question asks about something at the end of a paragraph, don't just concentrate on that. First, find out what the main concept of the paragraph is before predicting an answer option. So, once again, using this as an example, just because, in the question they ask you, refer back to this line, refer back to this, you can't just solely get stuck on that one line. You need to think deeper, and you need to think about the relationship about that line in the context of the entire paragraph, right? There's 2 mistakes that are done. If there's a line that's brought up, towards the end of a particular paragraph, what people tend to do is they overextend their inferences. And so, they try to extend that inference to the entire passage. Can't do that. That's not really a safe technique. What the safer technique is to extend that inference to just the paragraph that whatever said line is mentioned in, right? That way, your inference is a lot more precise and you don't fall into the bait of overgeneralizing if you, think about that line in the context of the entire passage. Because what the AAMC will do is they'll try to trip you up on that. And, they'll try to get you to pick answer choices where you are overgeneralizing stuff. That's not the answer. Just try to stick to the paragraph where the line is mentioned at and keep in mind the main idea of that paragraph and why that line is being mentioned. And so with that being said, those are all the skills that you have to keep in mind. Now, I would like you to go through this passage yourself when keeping these skills in mind. And before you begin, ask yourself, what type of passage is this? Is this passage an argumentative or a descriptive passage, right? Because establishing that will help you figure out the tone a lot more easily. And also, one last thing, I know sometimes, students, they don't like to draw an outline for the passages that they're doing because they think it's going to eat up too much time. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. At least highlight. At least highlight the main points. And when you're done with the passage, try to summarize the entire passage in one sentence. So doing a 1-sentence summary of the entire passage. And so with that being said, give this difficult ass passage a shot by keeping these skills in the back of your head. And in the next video, we will be going through the questions. And so if you guys have any concerns, comments, please comment down below. I am taking up new students currently. My website will be linked and the new student form will be linked down below. So good luck guys, and I'll see you in the next video.